The sand felt like needles against her face as Specialist Kira Vance pressed herself flat against the dune. 200 meters ahead, the target shimmered in the heat waves rising from the Mojave Desert floor. The wind gusted at 15 knots from the northwest, shifting unpredictably every few seconds. Most snipers would have called it impossible conditions. Kira had been training in worse since she was 12 years old. Chief Petty Officer Devin Hartley's voice crackled through her earpiece. "You plan to take that shot sometime today, Vance? Or should we set up camp and wait for better weather?" She ignored him. Her finger rested gently against the trigger guard, not touching the trigger itself. Not yet. The wind shifted again, this time from the west. She adjusted her breathing, slowing her heart rate the way her grandfather had taught her during those long summers in Montana. For seconds in, hold for 2, 6 seconds out. The target was a standard silhouette, but at this distance and in these conditions, it might as well have been invisible. Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you know someone who serves or has served in challenging conditions. Hartley shifted position beside her, sending a small cascade of sand down the dune face. He was a 15-year veteran of SEAL Team 5, built like a freight train, with a reputation for being one of the best close-quarters combat specialists in the Navy. He was also one of the most vocal skeptics about women in combat roles, though he kept it just subtle enough to avoid official complaints. His presence during her qualifications was no accident. Command wanted to see if she could perform under pressure, and Hartley was more than happy to provide it. "The wind's not going to improve," he said. "Either take the shot or admit this is beyond your skill level. No shame in knowing your limits." Kira's jaw tightened, but she kept her focus on the target. The wind dropped for just a moment, a brief pocket of relative calm in the chaos of desert thermals. She exhaled slowly, squeezed the trigger with steady pressure, and felt the rifle buck against her shoulder. The report echoed across the empty landscape. Through her scope, she watched the target spin on its mount. Center mass. Perfect hit. Hartley grunted. Lucky shot. Wind could have shifted either way. She didn't respond. Instead, she chambered another round and waited. The instructors watching from the observation post would call out another target any second now. This was the 4th day of the Advanced Scout Sniper Qualification course, and she was the only woman among 23 candidates. 3 had already washed out. 2 more were barely hanging on. Target 2, range 300 meters, wind 20 knots variable, the radio announced. "You have 45 seconds. This one was worse. The target sat in a depression, partially obscured by heat shimmer and dust. The wind howled across the open desert, throwing sand into her face despite her prone position. 45 seconds wasn't much time to calculate the shot, especially with conditions changing every few moments. She found the target through her scope and began her calculations. Windage, elevation, the slight cant of the rifle on uneven ground. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. "The gun doesn't care about your circumstances, Kira. It doesn't care about weather or pressure or what anyone thinks of you. Physics doesn't have opinions. Trust your training and make the shot." 30 seconds, the radio announced. Hartley leaned closer. "You're thinking too much. Just squeeze it off and hope for the best." She blocked him out. The wind gusted, then dropped. She took the shot. Another hit, this one just slightly off-center, but well within the kill zone. The morning continued like that. 6 more targets at increasingly difficult ranges and conditions. By the time the instructors called a break, Kira had hit 7 out of 8 targets. Most of the other candidates had managed 4 or 5. One candidate, a cocky Marine Corps transfer named Jake Peterson, had matched her 7. The candidates gathered near the transport vehicles, drinking water and trying to stay in the thin strips of shade. Peterson swaggered over to where Kira stood, checking her rifle. "Not bad, Vance," he said. "For a beginner. Must be nice having easy targets for your first time through the course." Kira looked up at him. "These are the same targets everyone shot at." "Sure, but the instructors went easy on your timing. Everyone knows they give the girls extra time to compensate for upper body strength issues." That wasn't true, and Peterson knew it. But 3 other candidates were listening now, and Kira could see the calculation in his eyes. He was establishing hierarchy, making sure everyone knew he didn't consider her a real competitor. "My timing was the same as yours," she said quietly. "Check with the instructors if you want." Peterson grinned. "Hey, no offense. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. This course is brutal. Nobody would blame you if you decided it wasn't for you. There's plenty of other roles in the Navy that would be a better fit." Hartley had walked over during the exchange. He didn't defend Kira, but he didn't pile on either. He just watched with his arms crossed, expression unreadable. The afternoon session tested their limits in ways the morning hadn't prepared them for. The instructors loaded all candidates into trucks and drove them 30 miles deeper into the desert, to a range nicknamed the Crucible. Here, the terrain was more brutal, the distances more extreme, and the expectations higher. This was where most candidates washed out. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Oakes stood waiting for them at the range entrance, her weathered face showing no emotion as the candidates filed out of the trucks. Oakes was a legend in the sniper community, one of the first women to complete the Marine Corps Scout sniper course back when it was still officially closed to women. She had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and had more confirmed kills than most of the instructors combined. "This afternoon, you will each attempt a series of shots at varying ranges up to 800 meters, she announced. Weather conditions are deteriorating. Wind speeds are expected to reach 30 knots with gusts up to 40. You will have 3 minutes per target. Miss 2 consecutive shots, and you are eliminated from the course." Questions? Nobody spoke. 800 meters in 14-knot winds was beyond difficult. It was nearly impossible, especially for candidates still learning their rifles and their own capabilities. Oakes looked directly at Kira. "Vance, you're up first." Kira felt every eye turn toward her. Going first meant setting the standard, but it also meant having no idea what to expect. She grabbed her rifle and followed Oakes to the firing line. The first target sat at 400 meters, positioned on a hillside with a rocky outcropping partially obscuring it. The wind screamed across the open ground, throwing up clouds of dust and sand. Kira settled into position, feeling the ground vibrate beneath her from the gusts. 3 minute starts now, Oakes said. Kira found the target through her scope. The wind was pushing hard from the left, but the gusts made it unpredictable. She watched the dust patterns, looking for rhythm in the chaos. Her grandfather had taught her this too. Wind is never truly random, Kira. It has pattern cycles. Watch long enough and you'll see them. She waited, breathing steady, finger resting on the trigger guard. 30 seconds passed. A minute. She could feel Peterson and the others watching, probably assuming she was freezing up. Then she saw it, a brief lull between gusts. She took the shot. Hit, Oakes announced. The second target appeared at 600 meters, this one moving on a slow lateral track. The wind had picked up even more, and now dust devils spun across the range, obscuring visibility in random bursts. Kira tracked the target, calculating lead time and wind compensation simultaneously. This shot required perfect timing. She waited for the target to reach a clear zone, anticipated the next wind lull, and fired. Hit, Oakes said again. The final target was the killer. 800 meters, stationary, but positioned in a narrow gap between two rock formations. The wind funneled through that gap with violent intensity, creating unpredictable eddies and currents. Most shooters would need multiple attempts to even get close. Kira studied the target for 2 full minutes, watching how the dust moved through the gap, how the heat shimmered distorted distances. She was burning time, but rushing this shot guaranteed failure. With 30 seconds remaining, she made her adjustments and fired. The bullet seemed to hang in the air forever. Then the target snapped back. Hit, Oakes said, and something that might have been approval flickered across her face. Clear the line. Kira stood and walked back to the group. Hartley gave her a nod that was almost respectful. Peterson's jaw was tight, his eyes hard. Peterson went next. He hit the first 2 targets quickly, efficiently, his shots solid and professional. But the 800-meter target defeated him. He took 3 shots and missed all 3. His face was red as he walked back to join the group. One by one, The other candidates attempted the course. Most failed the 800-meter shot. A few failed earlier targets. By the time the session ended, only 5 candidates had successfully hit all 3 targets. Kira was one of them. Peterson wasn't. That evening, back at the barracks, Kira sat cleaning her rifle while the other candidates discussed the day. Most of them ignored her, but she had grown used to that. Being invisible was better than being a constant target for harassment. Petty Officer Lena Moss dropped onto the bunk across from her. Moss was the only other woman in the course, a combat medic trying to cross-train into reconnaissance. She was built like a marathon runner, all lean muscle and endurance, with a quiet confidence that Kira appreciated. "You made that look easy today," Moss said. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Kira shrugged. "Practice. That's not just practice. I've been shooting since I was 10 years old, and I wouldn't attempt half the shots you made today." "Who trained you?" Before Kira could answer, Peterson walked past with 2 of his friends. He spoke loudly enough to make sure everyone heard. "Must be nice having the instructors give you easier wind conditions. Convenient how the gusts died down right when she took her shots." Moss started to stand, but Kira caught her arm and shook her head. "Not worth it. He's full of it, and everyone knows it," Moss said. "Doesn't matter. The targets don't lie." Peterson stopped and turned around. "What was that, Vance?" Kira looked up at him. "I said the targets don't lie. You missed." "I didn't. That's all that matters." His face flushed. "You think you're hot stuff because you had one good day. This course is just getting started. Wait until we get to the real challenges. Wait until we're in the field doing actual operations. That's when people like you wash out." "People like me," Kira repeated. "Yeah, people who got here because of diversity quotas instead of actual skill. The Navy wants to look good in the press, so they push candidates through who don't belong here." Hartley appeared in the doorway. "Peterson, secure your gear and shut your mouth. Vance qualified fair and square, same as everyone else. You got a problem with that, take it up with Commander Oakes." Peterson glared at both of them, but walked away. Hartley looked at Kira for a moment, then left without saying anything else. Moss whistled softly. "Did Chief Hartley just defend you?" "I think hell might have frozen over." Kira went back to cleaning her rifle. She didn't trust Hartley's sudden change in attitude. More likely, he just wanted to maintain unit discipline. But it didn't matter. In 3 days, they would deploy on their final qualification exercise, a week-long field operation in realistic combat conditions. That's where she would prove herself, not in training. The transport helicopter cut through the darkness, its rotors beating a steady rhythm against the night sky. Inside, 12 SEAL candidates sat in full combat gear, faces painted, weapons checked and rechecked. This was the final qualification exercise, a week-long operation in the Sierra Nevada mountains that would simulate real-world combat conditions. Only those who completed it successfully would earn their place in the teams. Kira stared out the open door at the landscape rushing past below. Mountains rose like jagged teeth against the stars, their peaks still holding onto winter snow despite the summer heat in the valleys. Somewhere down there, a team of Marine Force Recon instructors waited to play the role of enemy combatants. Their job was to make this exercise as brutal and realistic as possible. 5 minutes. The crew chief shouted over the rotor noise. Lieutenant Marcus Brennan stood and moved to the center of the helicopter. He was their team leader for this exercise, a 10-year SEAL veteran with sharp features and sharper instincts. He had a reputation for running tight operations and accepting nothing less than perfection from his people. "Listen up," he said. "Our insertion point is a clearing 2 clicks north of the primary objective. Intelligence reports enemy forces in the area are on high alert. We go in quiet, establish a perimeter, and move to our observation post by dawn. Vance, your primary sniper. Moss, you're spotting for her. Hartley, you're running point. Everyone else knows their positions." Questions? Nobody spoke. They had rehearsed this operation for 3 days, going over every detail until they could execute it in their sleep. But plans always changed once boots hit the ground. "Remember," Brennan continued, "the instructors are going to throw everything at us. Equipment failures, unexpected enemy contact, changing mission parameters. They want to see how we adapt under pressure. Stay flexible, stay alert, and trust your training. The helicopter began its descent. Kira checked her rifle one more time, then her secondary weapons, her ammunition, her communication gear. Everything was exactly where it needed to be. Beside her, Moss did the same, her movements methodical and calm. "You nervous?" Moss asked quietly. "Always," Kira replied. "Anyone who says they're not nervous before an op is either lying or stupid." Moss grinned. "Good to know I'm not the only one." The helicopter flared and settled into a hover 3 feet above the ground. The candidates fast-stroked out in quick succession, hitting the ground and immediately establishing a defensive perimeter. The moment the last person cleared the rope, the helicopter climbed away, its rotors fading into the distance. Silence fell over the clearing, the kind of silence that made every sound feel amplified, every movement feel exposed. Kira swept her sector with her rifle, her finger resting on the trigger guard, scanning for any sign of the instructors who were playing enemy forces. Hartley's voice came through her earpiece. "Clear north. Clear east," someone else reported. "Clear south. Clear west," Kira confirmed. "Move out," Brennan ordered. Standard patrol formation. Hartley on point, Peterson on rear security. "Let's move." They slipped into the trees like ghosts, each person maintaining proper spacing and sector discipline. Hartley set a brutal pace, pushing through dense undergrowth and steep terrain without hesitation. Kira kept her assigned position in the formation, her rifle ready, her eyes constantly scanning for threats. 2 hours into the patrol, Hartley raised his fist. Everyone froze. "Contact front," he whispered. 200 meters. 3 individuals, armed, stationary. Kira moved forward to where Brennan and Hartley crouched behind a fallen log. Through the trees ahead, she could see the faint outline of 3 instructors positioned along their planned route. They were set up in a classic ambush position, with good cover and interlocking fields of fire. Brennan studied the position through his night vision. "We can't go through them. Too much risk of getting compromised. We'll have to go around." "That adds an hour to our timeline," Hartley said. "We'll miss our window for the observation post." "Better than getting wiped out in an ambush," Brennan replied. "Vance, can you take them from here?" Kira studied the targets through her scope. The range was manageable, but shooting in darkness with only night vision made everything harder. Plus, the moment she fired, every instructor in the area would know their position. "I can take them," she said, "but it'll give away our location." Brennan considered for a moment. "Mark their position on GPS. We'll avoid them and continue to the objective. If we get compromised later, we'll know where they are." They altered their route, adding 40 minutes to their movement time. The terrain became steeper, the undergrowth thicker. Kira's legs burned from the constant uphill climb, and her pack felt like it had doubled in weight. But she kept moving, one step after another, maintaining her sector and staying alert for any sign of enemy contact. Dawn was breaking over the mountains when they finally reached the observation post, a rocky outcrop with a clear view of the valley below. The primary objective, a simulated enemy compound, sat nestled against a mountainside 3 kilometers away. Smoke rose from its buildings, and Kira could see movement even at this distance. "Set up defensive positions," Brennan ordered. "Vance, Moss, get eyes on that compound. I want a full report on enemy strength, positions, and patterns." Kira and Moss found a position with good cover and clear sight lines. Kira set up her rifle on its bipod, while Moss unpacked the spotting scope and range-finding equipment. The valley stretched out below them, beautiful and deadly in the morning light. "I count 12 hostiles visible," Moss said quietly, her eye pressed to the spotting scope. "For on the perimeter, 8 inside the compound. Looks like they're running a shift change." Kira watched through her rifle scope, memorizing positions and movements. The compound had 3 main buildings and 2 guard towers. The towers were the biggest threat, positioned to cover all approaches to the compound. "Guard towers are elevated approximately 30 feet, Kira said. "Range to nearest tower is 2,800 meters. Wind is calm now, but that'll change once the sun heats the valley." Moss made notes on her tactical pad. "There's a supply truck approaching from the north. Looks like they're expecting a delivery. They spent the next hour cataloging everything they could see. Enemy numbers, weapons, routines, weaknesses. This information would form the basis for their assault plan, which they would execute in 3 days. Behind them, the rest of the team established camp and began their own reconnaissance tasks. Hartley set up communication relays. Peterson and another candidate scouted alternate routes. Everyone had a job. Everyone contributed. But Kira could feel the pressure building. This was the critical phase of the qualification. One mistake, one moment of carelessness, and the entire team could fail. And she knew that some of them, Peterson especially, were waiting for her to be that mistake. The second day brought complications. Dark clouds rolled over the mountains just after dawn, bringing with them the promise of serious weather. Kira watched the storm approach from her observation position, feeling the temperature drop and the wind pick up. Mountain weather was notoriously unpredictable, and this storm looked like it would be a bad one. Brennan crawled up beside her in moss, studying the sky with concern. "How long until that hits us?" 2 hours, maybe less, Moss said, "and it's going to be nasty. I'm seeing lightning in those clouds." Brennan swore softly. "Command, brief possible weather, but nothing like this. We need to accelerate our timeline." "Sir, the assault isn't planned for another 2 days," Moss said. "We haven't finished reconnaissance. We don't have complete intelligence on enemy patterns. We won't have a choice if this storm pins us down," Brennan replied. "I'm calling it in." He moved back to the communication position where Hartley was managing the radio equipment. Kira kept her eye on the compound below, watching as the instructors playing enemy forces began securing equipment and preparing for the incoming storm. They knew what was coming too. "Vance," Peterson's voice came through her earpiece. "I'm at secondary observation point. I count 15 hostiles now, not 12. 3 more just arrived in a vehicle." Kira swung her scope to where Peterson had positioned himself on the opposite side of their perimeter. He was right. 3 more instructors had arrived, all heavily armed, all moving with purpose into the compound. "Confirmed," she replied. 15 hostiles total. They're reinforcing. "This keeps getting better," Peterson muttered. Moss tapped Kira's shoulder and pointed. "More movement. North approach. Looks like a patrol heading out." Kira found the patrol in her scope. 4 instructors moving in tactical formation, heading directly toward their observation post. They were still 2 kilometers away, but at their current pace, they would reach the team's position within the hour. "Contact," Kira reported. 4-person patrol, moving toward our position from the compound. Range 2,000 meters and closing. Brennan's voice came back immediately. "Everyone hold position. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." "Hartley, what's our status with command?" "Still waiting for response, sir," Hartley replied. "Storm is interfering with communications." The wind picked up, sending dust and debris swirling through their position. The first raindrops began to fall, fat and heavy. Within minutes, it became a downpour. Visibility dropped to almost nothing as the storm hammered the mountain. Kira kept her rifle trained on where she had last seen the patrol, but the rain made it impossible to see more than 50 meters. They were effectively blind, and somewhere out there, 4 instructors were moving toward them. "I've lost visual," she reported. "Rain is too heavy. Everyone stay quiet and stay low," Brennan ordered. "With luck, they'll pass us by in this weather." But luck wasn't on their side. Through the sound of rain and wind, Kira heard something that made her blood run cold. Voices. "Close. Very close. Contact immediate," she whispered. "Hostiles within 50 meters." The voices grew louder. The instructors were moving slowly, carefully, sweeping the area despite the terrible conditions. They knew someone was out here, and they were determined to find them. Kira's finger moved to her trigger. Beside her, Moss had drawn her sidearm. Across the perimeter, she knew the others were doing the same. If the instructors found them, the exercise would be over. They would be marked as compromised and fail the qualification. The voices were right on top of them now. Through the sheets of rain, Kira could make out a shape moving between the trees. An instructor, weapon raised, scanning methodically. He was less than 20 meters away. "Nobody move." Brennan's voice was barely audible. Nobody breathed. The instructor moved closer. 15 meters. 10. Kira could see his face now through the rain, could see his eyes sweeping across their position. She pressed herself flatter against the ground, willing herself to become invisible. The instructor stopped. He was looking directly at their position, his weapon coming up. Kira's heart hammered in her chest. He had seen something. He was on call in. Then lightning split the sky with a tremendous crack. Thunder followed instantly, shaking the ground. The instructor flinched, ducking instinctively. When he straightened, he was looking in a different direction, distracted by the storm's fury. "Fall back," one of the other instructors called. "This storm is too dangerous. We'll resume search when it clears." The patrol moved away, disappearing into the rain. Kira didn't move for a full minute after they left, her muscles locked in position, barely daring to believe they hadn't been compromised. "That was too close," Moss whispered. "Status report," Brennan called quietly. Everyone sound off. One by one, the team members reported in. Everyone was accounted for, everyone was secure. But the close call had rattled them all. The storm continued for 3 hours, turning their observation post into a miserable, muddy nightmare. Rain soaked through their gear despite their best efforts. The temperature dropped into the 40s. Kira's fingers went numb, making it difficult to maintain proper grip on her weapon. When the storm finally began to clear, Brennan gathered the team for a briefing. His face was grim. Command finally responded, he said. "The storm has changed everything. They're accelerating the exercise timeline. We have 24 hours to complete the primary objective and reach the extraction point. If we're not there, we fail." "Sir, that's not enough time," Peterson protested. "We need at least another day of reconnaissance before we can plan a proper assault." "We don't have another day," Brennan replied. "We move tonight. We hit the compound at 0200 hours. That gives us time to plan, prep, and execute." "The compound has 15 hostiles," Hartley said. "We're 12 people. Those aren't good odds, even if they're instructors going easy on us." "They won't be going easy," Brennan said. "That's the point. This is supposed to simulate a real-world operation where everything goes wrong." "Well, everything is going wrong, so we adapt." He looked at each team member in turn. His eyes lingered on Kira. "Vance, you're our ace in the hole. When we make our move, I need you to eliminate those guard towers first. Without Overwatch, we can approach the compound unseen. Can you make those shots?" Kira thought about the range, the conditions, the pressure. 2,800 meters to the nearest tower. At night, possibly in residual wind from the storm. It was an extremely difficult shot, maybe impossible. "I can make them," she said. Brennan nodded. "Then we have a chance. Everyone gear up. We've got 12 hours to plan this operation and 6 hours after that to execute it. Let's get to work." As the team dispersed to prepare, Kira remained in position, studying the compound through her scope. The storm had cleared the air, giving her a perfect view despite the distance. She could see the guard towers clearly now, could see the instructors moving through the compound below. Somewhere in the back of her mind, her grandfather's voice spoke to her again. "The hard shots are what separate good snipers from great ones, Kira. Anyone can hit a target at 300 meters in perfect conditions. But when everything is stacked against you, when failure means people die, that's when you find out who you really are." She had trained her whole life for moments like this. Now she would find out if that training was enough. The afternoon sun broke through the remaining clouds, heating the valley and creating unstable air currents that would make long-range shooting treacherous. Kira lay behind her rifle, studying the guard towers through her scope, measuring distances and calculating angles. Moss sat beside her with charts and a ballistic calculator, running numbers for every possible variable. "Wind is shifting every 30 seconds, Moss said quietly. "We're getting thermals rising from the valley floor, mixing with cooler air from the storm. It's creating turbulence at every altitude." Kira watched dust patterns in the valley, seeing the chaos Moss described. At close range, wouldn't matter much. But at nearly 3,000 meters, even a slight miscalculation would send the bullet meters off target. "Range to Tower 1 is 2,820 meters," Moss continued. Tower 2 is 2,790. Both elevated 30 feet above ground level. You'll need to compensate for the angle and the elevation difference between our position and theirs. What's the bullet drop at that range? Kira asked. Approximately 40 feet, Moss replied. But with this wind turbulence, it could vary by several feet in any direction depending on when you take the shot. Behind them, Brennan was briefing the assault team on their approach route. Hartley and Peterson would lead the main element, moving in during the confusion after the towers went down. 2 other candidates would provide security for the withdrawal. Everyone had a role. Everyone except Kira and Moss, who would remain at the observation post providing overwatch and eliminating targets as needed. You know this is probably impossible, right? Moss said. I'm not trying to discourage you, but the conditions are about as bad as they could be for this kind of shot. Kira adjusted her scope, making minute changes to the magnification. I made worse shots. When? Kira hesitated. Her training with her grandfather was something she rarely discussed. Most people wouldn't believe her if she told them she had been shooting at extreme ranges since she was 15 years old, that she had spent entire summers in the Montana wilderness learning to read wind and terrain like other kids learned to read books. A long time ago, she finally said, different circumstances. Moss studied her for a moment. You're not like the other candidates, are you? I mean, you're good. Really good. But it's more than that. You got training most of us never had access to. My grandfather was a Marine Scout sniper in Vietnam, Kira said. 3 tours. After he retired, he took me hunting every summer. Taught me everything he knew. That explains a lot, Moss said. But Vietnam-era techniques against modern training methods, I'm not sure how that translates. Physics doesn't change, Kira replied. Wind is wind. Distance is distance. The tools might be better now, but the fundamentals are the same. The sun continued its arc across the sky as the afternoon wore into evening. Kira remained in position, studying the towers, watching how the wind affected them differently at different times. The guards changed shift every 4 hours. Their patterns were predictable, their movements routine. They were professionals, but they were also operating under the assumption that no threat could reach them at this distance. 0 hour approached. Brennan gathered the assault team for final equipment checks and last-minute adjustments to the plan. Peterson strapped on extra ammunition magazines, his face set in concentration. Hartley tested his night vision gear, making sure everything functioned perfectly. They would be moving in darkness, and equipment failure could mean mission failure. Vance, Brennan called. Final confirmation. Can you make these shots? Every eye turned to her. She could see the doubt in some faces, the hope in others. Peterson looked skeptical. Hartley's expression was unreadable. Even Moss, who had been supportive, showed concern. Kira thought about lying, about giving them the confidence they wanted to hear. But that would help no one. If she missed these shots, the entire assault team would be exposed and vulnerable. The shots are at the extreme edge of possible, she said. The conditions are poor. The wind is unpredictable. But I've done my calculations, I've studied the patterns, and I believe I can make them. That's all I can tell you. Brennan nodded slowly. That's honest. I appreciate that. But I need better than possible, Vance. I need probable. I need you to tell me that when we start moving, those towers are going down. The tension stretched between them. Kira felt the weight of 12 people's success or failure resting on her shoulders. One shot, one miss, and they would all pay the price. I'll make the shots, she said. Both towers. When you need them. Brennan held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Good enough. Everyone move to staging positions. We go in 1 hour. The team dispersed, moving quietly to their assigned positions. Kira remained at her rifle, checking and rechecking her equipment. Moss stayed beside her, ready to call corrections and provide backup if needed. As darkness fell over the valley, the wind began to shift again. The thermals that had plagued them during the day started to settle, creating more stable air. Not perfect conditions, but better than they had been. Kira took it as a small blessing. 30 minutes, Moss whispered. Kira watched the guard tower through her scope. The instructor playing the guard role was leaning against the railing, his weapon slung over his shoulder. He looked relaxed, confident in the protection his elevated position provided. He had no idea that someone was watching him from nearly 3 kilometers away, calculating the exact moment to end his participation in this exercise. The second tower showed similar complacency. These instructors had probably never expected candidates to attempt an assault from this distance under these conditions. They were positioned to defend against a close approach, not a long-range elimination. 15 minutes, Moss said. Kira began her breathing exercises, slowing her heart rate, calming her mind. This was the moment everything came down to. All her training, all her preparation, all those summers with her grandfather in the Montana mountains. Everything had led to this. 5 minutes. The assault team was moving now, slipping down the mountain under cover of darkness. They would reach the assault position in 10 minutes, then wait for her signal. 2 shots. 2 towers. No mistakes. Wind is 3 knots from the northwest, Moss reported. Holding steady for now. Kira found the first tower in her scope, centering the crosshairs on the guard's chest. At this distance, she could barely make out details even with magnification. Just a shape, a shadow against the compound lights below. She adjusted for windage, elevation, the angle of the shot. Her finger rested on the trigger. 2 minutes. The compound was quiet now. Most of the instructors had moved inside for evening briefings and meals. Only the tower guards remained visible, and they showed no signs of alertness. They were bored, going through the motions, expecting another quiet night. 1 minute, Moss whispered. Assault team is in position. They're waiting for your signal. Kira exhaled slowly. The wind held steady. The air was as calm as it would get. This was the moment. She squeezed the trigger with smooth, steady pressure. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. Through the scope, she watched the bullet's trajectory, a journey that seemed to take forever. The tower guard dropped. Hit confirmed, Moss said, her voice tight with excitement. Tower 1 is down. Kira was already shifting to the second tower. She had maybe 10 seconds before someone in the compound noticed the first guard had fallen. 10 seconds to chamber a new round, acquire the second target, make the calculations, and take the shot. The second guard had heard something. He was turning, looking toward the first tower, his weapon coming off his shoulder. He was starting to understand that something was wrong. Wind shift, Moss reported. 2 knots from the west now. Kira adjusted, her crosshairs settling on the guard's center mass. He was moving now, reaching for his radio. She couldn't wait for perfect conditions. She took the shot. The bullet covered the distance in just over 3 seconds. The second guard dropped. Both towers down, Kira reported. Assault team is clear to move. Brennan's voice came back immediately. Moving now. Maintain overwatch. Through her scope, Kira watched the compound come alive with activity. Instructors emerged from buildings, weapons ready, searching for threats they couldn't see. They knew they were under attack, but they had no idea where it was coming from. The assault team was still 800 meters out, moving fast through the darkness. 3 hostiles moving to the perimeter, Moss called out. Southeast corner. Kira found them in her scope. 3 instructors taking up defensive positions, scanning the approaches to the compound. They were looking in the wrong direction, expecting an attack from below rather than from a mountain above. I have them, Kira said. Engaging. She took the first shot. 1 instructor down. The other 2 scattered, seeking cover. Kira tracked the nearest one, led him slightly as he ran, and fired. He dropped. The third made it to cover behind a concrete barrier. 1 hostile behind cover, southeast corner, she reported. I don't have a clean shot. Hartley's voice came through. We're 300 meters out. Keep them pinned. Kira fired 2 rounds at the concrete barrier, forcing the instructor to stay down. She couldn't hit him, but she could keep him from engaging the assault team as they approached. More hostiles emerging, Moss said. North side. 4 of them. Kira swung her rifle to find the new threats. 4 instructors were moving in tactical formation toward the southeast corner, trying to reinforce their pinned comrade. They were exposed, moving across open ground. She took careful aim and fired. 1 down. She chambered another round and fired again. 2 down. The remaining 2 dove for cover. Assault team is at the compound wall, Brennan reported. Preparing to breach. The compound erupted with activity. Instructors were everywhere now, responding to the assault with professional precision. But they were confused, disorganized, still not understanding the full scope of the attack. The loss of their tower guards had blinded them, and Kira's long-range fire was keeping them scattered and defensive. Breaching now, Brennan said. Kira heard the muted thump of breaching charges through her earpiece, followed by the controlled chaos of the assault team entering the compound. Gunfire erupted, the sharp crack of rifles mixing with shouted commands and tactical calls. She maintained her overwatch, scanning for threats the assault team couldn't see. An instructor appeared on a rooftop, trying to get a high angle on the breach point. Kira eliminated him before he could fire a shot. 2 more instructors tried to flank the assault team from the west. She took them down in quick succession. Moss was calling out targets faster now, her voice urgent but controlled. Rooftop, northwest building. Window, 2nd floor east side. Alley between buildings 1 and 2. Kira engaged each target in turn, her movements smooth and automatic. This was what all the training had been for. Not just making one impossible shot, but maintaining sustained, accurate fire under pressure while her team depended on her. We're inside the main building, Hartley reported. Heavy resistance. Multiple hostiles, close quarters. Kira couldn't help with that. Close quarters combat was beyond her scope's capability. She could only trust that Hartley and the others could handle it while she protected their flanks and rear. 2 hostiles attempting to exit the compound, Moss called. They're running for vehicles. Kira found them sprinting across the compound yard toward a truck. If they reached it and escaped, they could call in reinforcements or set up an ambush on the extraction route. She led the first runner, calculated his speed and trajectory, and fired. He went down. The second runner changed direction, weaving unpredictably. She tracked him, waited for him to commit to a direction, and took the shot. He dropped 10 meters from the truck. Nice shooting, Moss said. We have the objective. Brennan's voice came through, breathing hard. Package is secure. Beginning withdrawal. Kira watched as the assault team emerged from the main building, moving in a tight formation with someone in the center. The simulated package they had been sent to recover, probably one of the instructors playing the role of a high-value target. They were moving fast, professional, exactly as they had trained. But they weren't clear yet. More instructors were converging on the compound, responding to the assault. Kira counted at least 6 more hostiles approaching from different directions. The assault team would be outnumbered and trapped if those reinforcements reached them. Multiple hostiles inbound, she reported. 6 confirmed, possibly more. They're going to cut off your withdrawal route. We see them, Brennan replied. Can you slow them down? Engaging, Kira said. She began taking shots as fast as she could acquire targets. The instructors were moving tactically, using cover effectively, making themselves difficult targets. But they were still predictable in their movements, still following the patterns and procedures she had studied. 1 hostile down on the north approach. She shifted. Another down on the east. Chambered around, found a target trying to flank, fired. He dropped. Her movements were mechanical now, efficient, driven by training and muscle memory rather than conscious thought. The assault team was moving again, fighting their way toward the compound exit. Gunfire echoed through the valley. Someone was yelling tactical commands. The exercise had become a full battlefield simulation, exactly what the instructors had intended. 2 more hostiles down, Peterson's voice reported from inside the compound. But we're running low on ammunition. Conserve your rounds, Brennan ordered. Vance is thinning them out. Keep moving. Kira eliminated another target, then another. Her rifle was hot from sustained fire, the barrel heating up from the rapid succession of shots. She would need to let it cool soon or risk affecting her accuracy. But not yet. Not while her team was still in danger. We're clear of the compound, Hartley reported, moving to Rally Point Alpha. The assault team disappeared into the darkness beyond the compound lights. Kira maintained her overwatch, watching for any pursuit. A few instructors tried to follow, but they were cautious now, aware that someone was providing devastating sniper fire from an unknown position. All hostiles have broken contact, Moss reported. I think we're clear. Kira watched for another minute, her crosshairs sweeping across the compound. No movement. No pursuit. The instructors were regrouping, probably calling into control to report the successful assault on their position. Pack up, Kira told Moss. Time to move. They broke down their position quickly, police calling their brass and erasing any signs of their presence. In 5 minutes, they were ready to move. Kira took one last look at the compound through her scope. Instructors were moving through the area now, recovering their simulated casualties and assessing the damage. She had made 17 shots total, 17 targets at ranges from 2,000 to 3,000 meters, most of them under combat conditions with moving targets and time pressure. Her grandfather would have been proud. The extraction point was 15 kilometers away through rough mountain terrain. The assault team moved fast, pushing hard to reach it before their window closed. Kira and Moss rejoined them at the rally point, falling into formation without breaking stride. Brennan set a brutal pace. They had 6 hours to reach extraction, and every minute counted. Behind them, somewhere in the darkness, the instructors would be organizing pursuit. The exercise wasn't over until they were safely extracted. 2 kilometers into the movement, Peterson fell back to where Kira was maintaining rear security. His face was streaked with dirt and camouflage paint, his breathing heavy from the sustained movement. Those are some incredible shots back there, he said quietly. I've never seen anything like it. Kira kept scanning her sector. Thanks. No, seriously, Peterson continued. I owe you an apology. I've been giving you grief since day one because I didn't think you belonged here. I was wrong. You saved our asses back there. She glanced at him. His expression was genuine, none of the usual mockery or skepticism. The combat had changed something in him. We're not clear yet, she said. Stay focused. They continued moving. The terrain became steeper, the footing treacherous in the darkness. Someone twisted an ankle, but kept moving through the pain. Equipment straps chafed. Muscles burned, but they pushed forward because stopping meant failing. 3 hours into the movement, Hartley raised his fist. Everyone froze. Contact front, he whispered. Multiple individuals. Range unknown. Kira moved forward with Brennan to assess the situation. Through her night vision, she could see shapes moving through the trees ahead. At least 8 people, possibly more. They were spread out in a search pattern, sweeping the area methodically. They're between us and the extraction point, Brennan said quietly. We can't go around them. The terrain doesn't allow it. Can we wait them out? Hartley asked. Negative. We're on a clock. If we miss extraction, we fail regardless of everything else we accomplished. Kira studied the instructors' positions. They were well-spaced, alert, moving with professional discipline. Taking them on in a direct firefight would be costly, and the assault team was already low on ammunition from the compound assault. I can thin them out, she said. Create a gap in their line. Give us a path through. Brennan looked at her. How many shots? At least 4, maybe 5. They'll know where I am after the first one. I'll need to move fast between positions. Moss spoke up. I'll move with her. We can leapfrog positions, keep them guessing where the fire is coming from. Brennan considered for a moment. Do it. Everyone else, be ready to move the moment we have an opening. We go through fast and quiet. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. Kira and Moss split off from the main group, circling to find a good firing position. The instructors were still moving, their search pattern bringing them closer to where the assault team was hidden. Time was running out. She found a position behind a fallen log with clear sight lines to 3 of the instructors. Moss set up 30 meters away with a different angle. They would coordinate their shots, hitting multiple targets simultaneously to create maximum confusion. Ready? Moss whispered through the radio. On my mark, Kira replied. 3, 2, 1, mark. 2 shots cracked through the night. 2 instructors went down. Kira was already moving, leaving her position before anyone could pinpoint where the shot had come from. She reached a new spot behind a boulder and found another target. Fired. Down. Contact, one of the instructors yelled. Sniper, northeast. But Kira was already southeast now, firing from a completely different angle. Another instructor down. Moss fired from her position, eliminating a fifth target. The remaining instructors scattered, seeking cover, confused about how many shooters they were facing and where the fire was coming from. Go, Brennan ordered. The assault team moved through the gap, fast and silent. Kira and Moss provided covering fire, keeping the instructors pinned while their teammates slipped past. When the last person was through, they broke contact and ran to catch up with the group. The instructors tried to pursue, but they were disorganized now, cautious. They had lost 5 people in less than a minute to an enemy they couldn't see or locate. By the time they regrouped, the assault team had disappeared into the darkness. The team maintained their rapid pace for another 2 hours. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east when they finally reached the extraction point, a clearing on a ridgeline with a view of the valleys below. They established a defensive perimeter and waited for the extraction helicopter. Brennan did a head count. Everyone was accounted for, exhausted but intact. He checked his watch, then nodded with satisfaction. "We made it with 20 minutes to spare," he said. "Package secured, minimal casualties, extraction on schedule." "Well done, everyone." Hartley clapped Kira on the shoulder. "Your shooting made this possible. Without those tower eliminations, we would have been cut to pieces at the compound." The others nodded in agreement. Even Peterson, who had been her harshest critic, gave her a thumbs up. Something had shifted in the group dynamic. She was no longer the outsider, the diversity quota, the candidate who didn't belong. She was part of the team. The sound of helicopter rotors echoed through the valleys. Their extraction was inbound. The exercise was over. As they loaded onto the helicopter, Kira caught Moss grinning at her. "What?" she asked. "You just proved something a lot of people said was impossible," Moss replied. "Female sniper completing the advanced qualification course. Making shots most male candidates can't even attempt. You know what this means, right?" Kira shook her head. "It means you're about to become the most requested sniper in the teams. Everyone's going to want you on their operations. You just wrote yourself a ticket to whatever assignment you want." The helicopter lifted off, banking away from the mountains. Kira watched the training area disappear below them, watched the sun break over the eastern peaks, painting the world in shades of gold and orange. She felt exhausted, battered, and more satisfied than she had been in years. But in the back of her mind, something nagged at her. This had been a qualification exercise, a test under simulated conditions. The instructors had been using blanks and tactical markers. No one was actually trying to kill them. Real combat would be different. Real enemies wouldn't follow predictable patterns or exercise safety protocols. Real bullets didn't distinguish between training and reality. She had proved she could perform under pressure in controlled conditions. But the real test was still ahead of her, waiting somewhere in a conflict zone she hadn't yet seen. And when that test came, there would be no doovers, no safety nets, no instructors calling exercise complete. There would only be the shot, the target, and the consequences of success or failure. Brennan moved through the helicopter, checking on each team member. When he reached Kira, he sat down beside her. "The brass is going to hear about your performance," he said. "Those tower shots were something special. I've been a SEAL for 10 years, and I've never seen anyone make shots like that under those conditions." "I had good training," Kira replied. "It's more than training. You've got instinct, natural talent. That can't be taught." He paused. "I'm putting you in for commendation. And when I get my next deployment assignment, I'm requesting you for my team. If you're interested." Kira looked at him, surprised. "You want me on your team? After what I saw tonight?" "Absolutely. You're one of the best shooters I've ever worked with. I'd be stupid not to want you covering my 6. The helicopter flew on through the dawn. Below them, the training grounds disappeared into the distance. Ahead lay the rest of their careers, the real missions, the actual combat that their training had prepared them for. Kira closed her eyes and let herself rest for the first time in days. She had earned it. 6 months later, Kira found herself in a very different desert. This one wasn't in California. This one was real, hostile, and filled with people who genuinely wanted her dead. The training exercise felt like a lifetime ago. She was part of SEAL Team 5 now, assigned to Brennan's unit just as he had promised. They had deployed to an undisclosed location in the Middle East 3 weeks earlier, conducting operations against high-value targets in a region where insurgent activity had been escalating for months. The mission brief had been straightforward. Extract a captured intelligence officer from an enemy compound before he could be executed or moved to a more secure location. Standard hostage rescue. Time-sensitive, high-risk. The kind of operation SEALs train for constantly. But nothing about this mission had gone according to plan. They were supposed to have air support. Weather had grounded the helicopters. They were supposed to have reliable intelligence on enemy numbers. Intelligence had been wrong by a factor of 3. They were supposed to extract before dawn. It was almost noon now, and they were still pinned down 2 kilometers from the extraction point. Kira pressed herself against the rubble of what had once been a building, feeling the heat radiating from the broken concrete. The temperature was over 115 degrees. Her gear weighed her down like an anchor. Sweat stung her eyes despite the bandana she wore under her helmet. Across the shattered street, Brennan was coordinating with command, trying to get them the air support they desperately needed. Beside him, Hartley worked the radio, calling in their position and status. The rest of the team was spread out among the ruins, holding a defensive perimeter that grew more precarious by the minute. They had successfully extracted the intelligence officer, a Navy lieutenant named Chun who had been captured during a reconnaissance mission 2 weeks earlier. But the extraction had alerted every insurgent in the area. Now they were surrounded, outnumbered, and running low on ammunition. "How many you counting?" Moss asked from her position beside Kira. Kira scanned the surrounding buildings through her scope. "At least 40, maybe more. They keep bringing in reinforcements. We can't hold here much longer," Moss said. "We're down to our last few magazines." A burst of gunfire raked their position, sending fragments of concrete spraying across them. Kira ducked, then returned fire at the muzzle flash she had seen 300 meters away. Someone screamed. The firing from that position stopped. Brennan crawled over to their position, his face grim. "Command says air support is still 30 minutes out. Extraction helicopter can't come in until the area is secure." 30 minutes might as well be 30 hours, Moss said. "We'll be out of ammunition in 15. Brennan looked at Kira. "Can you reach that building on the ridge? The one with the communications tower?" Kira found it in her scope. 800 meters away, elevated position with clear sight lines to their location. She could see figures moving in the windows, coordinating the attack against them. "I can reach it," she said. "That's their command post," Brennan explained. "Take it out and the attack loses coordination. Might buy us enough time for air support to arrive." "It's a hard shot in this heat," Moss warned. "The thermals are going to play hell with your trajectory." Kira was already making calculations. The heat shimmer was severe, distorting everything beyond 500 meters. The wind was gusting unpredictably, throwing up dust and debris. And she was exhausted, dehydrated, her hands shaking slightly from adrenaline and fatigue. "I'll make it work," she said. She found a stable position among the rubble and set up her rifle. Through her scope, she could see 3 insurgents in the command post, one of them speaking into a radio, directing forces. He was the priority target. Take him out, and the others would lose their command structure. "Wind is 7 knots from the southwest," Moss reported, gusting to 12. "Temperature is 117 degrees. Kira adjusted for the heat, the wind, the elevation. At this range, and in these conditions, she had maybe a 60% chance of hitting her target. Not great odds, but better than the alternatives. She controlled her breathing, fighting against her body's demand for more oxygen in the brutal heat. Her finger found the trigger. The insurgent commander moved to the window, speaking into his radio, coordinating the next assault on their position. She fired. The bullet seemed to move in slow motion through the superheated air. She watched it arc, saw it drift slightly in the wind, then impact. The insurgent commander dropped. "Hit," Moss confirmed. "Nice shot." But there was no time to celebrate. The other insurgents in the command post scattered, and within seconds, someone else would take command. She needed to eliminate as many as possible before they reorganized. She fired again. Another hit. Then again. A third insurgent down. The command post went quiet. The effect was immediate. The coordinated fire from the surrounding buildings became sporadic, disorganized. Individual fighters were still shooting, but without central direction, their attacks lacked the focused intensity that had been slowly overwhelming the SEAL position. That bought us some time, Brennan said. But they'll regroup soon. We need to move. Move where? Peterson asked. They've got us surrounded on 3 sides, and the 4th side is open ground. Then we go through the open ground, Brennan replied. Fast and aggressive. Kira, can you provide covering fire? She scanned the battlefield, identifying the most dangerous positions. If they were going to run across open ground, she would need to suppress at least 5 different firing positions simultaneously. It was impossible for one shooter, unless she didn't give them time to return fire. I can do it, she said, but I'll need to move fast between positions. 30 seconds maximum for the entire run. That's not much time, Hartley said. It's all we've got, Brennan replied. Everyone get ready to move on my signal. Vance, you call it. Kira took a deep breath and found her first target. An insurgent position in a second-story window 200 meters away. She fired. Hit. She was already moving, finding cover 10 meters away, acquiring her second target. Fired. Hit. Moved again. The insurgents were trying to track her, but she wasn't giving them time. 5 seconds per position. Shoot and move. Shoot and move. Classical sniper doctrine thrown out because the situation demanded speed over precision. Go, she shouted. The team broke from cover and ran. Kira continued her covering fire, drawing attention away from them, forcing the insurgents to take cover instead of shooting at the fleeing SEALs. She eliminated 2 more targets, wounded several others, kept the enemy suppressed for the critical seconds the team needed to reach better cover. Then she was running too, sprinting across broken ground with her rifle in hand and bullets cracking past her head. Someone was yelling. Explosions shook the ground. The world narrowed to the simple act of running, of covering the distance between death and survival. She dove behind a concrete barrier where the rest of the team had taken cover. Moss grabbed her shoulder, checking for wounds. I'm good, Kira gasped. Everyone else? Lieutenant Shun took a round in the leg, Hartley reported. But he'll make it. Everyone else is intact. They were in a better defensive position now, with solid cover and better fields of fire. But they were still surrounded, still outnumbered, and time was running out. Air support is 10 minutes out, Brennan said. We hold here until they arrive. Conserve ammunition. Make every shot count. The insurgents regrouped and launched another assault. This time, they came from multiple directions simultaneously, trying to overwhelm the SEAL position through sheer numbers. Kira picked her targets carefully, each bullet precious. Beside her, the others did the same. But the enemy kept coming. The insurgents came in waves, pushing forward with reckless aggression. They knew the SEALs were running out of ammunition, knew that time was on their side. All they had to do was maintain pressure until the Americans ran dry. Kira fired her last magazine, making each shot count. Around her, the others were doing the same. The sound of gunfire from their position was becoming sporadic, individual shots instead of the sustained fire they had maintained earlier. The enemy would hear that change. They would know what it meant. I'm out, Peterson called, switching to sidearm. Same here, another voice reported. Kira had 3 rounds left in her rifle. 3 shots between survival and being overrun. She chose her targets carefully, 3 insurgents who were advancing faster than the others, leading the assault. 3 shots, 3 kills. Then her rifle was empty. She drew her sidearm, a Sig Sauer P226 with 2 magazines remaining. 30 rounds total, against 40 or more enemies. Brennan's voice was steady despite the situation. Air support is 5 minutes out. We hold until then. Close quarters if we have to. Nobody quits. But Kira could see the reality in everyone's faces. 5 minutes was an eternity when you were out of ammunition and surrounded. They might hold for 2 minutes, maybe 3. But 5 was impossible. The insurgents sensed victory. They were closing in from 3 directions now, advancing through the rubble with growing confidence. A few more minutes, and they would be close enough to storm the position. "We won't make it," Moss whispered beside Kira. Those 3 words hit harder than any bullet. Moss never gave up, never showed fear. If she was losing hope, then the situation was truly desperate. Kira looked around their position. 9 SEALs, most of them out of rifle ammunition, down to sidearms and whatever rounds they had left. 1 wounded hostage who couldn't fight, against an enemy force that had been reinforced throughout the morning and now numbered close to 50. The mathematics were brutal and unforgiving. And she saw it. A ridge to the west, 800 meters away. Higher elevation than their current position, with clear sight lines across the entire battlefield. If someone could reach that ridge, could set up there, they could dominate the fight, pin down the insurgents. Buy time for air support. But reaching it meant crossing 600 meters of open ground under fire. It meant leaving the relative safety of their defensive position. It meant suicide, unless you were fast enough, skilled enough, and desperate enough to try. Kira looked at her rifle. Empty. She had 4 magazines left in her pack, 80 rounds total. It was all the ammunition she had left in the world. If she missed, if she failed, there would be no second chances. She turned to Brennan. "That ridge to the west. I can reach it." He looked where she was pointing, then back at her like she was insane. "You'd never make it. They'd cut you down before you got halfway. Not if everyone provides covering fire. Not if I move fast enough." Brennan shook his head. "It's too risky. We stay together." "Staying together means dying together," Kira said. "From that ridge, I can suppress their entire force. Keep them pinned until air support arrives. It's our only chance." "You'll be alone out there," Moss said. "If you get hit, we can't help you." "I know," Kira replied. The insurgents were getting closer. She could see individual faces now, could see the determination in their movements. They were preparing for a final assault, gathering their forces for one overwhelming push. Brennan looked at the ridge, then at Kira, then at the approaching enemy. She could see him running the calculations, weighing impossible options against worse alternatives. Finally, he nodded. "Everyone covering fire on my mark," he ordered. "Vance, you get 1 chance at this. Make it count." Kira reloaded her rifle with one of her last magazines. Her hands were steady now, the fear burned away by absolute focus. This was what her grandfather had trained her for. Not the perfect shots in ideal conditions, but the impossible shots when everything was stacked against you and failure meant death. She looked at Moss. "If I don't make it back, tell my family I made the shot." Moss grabbed her arm. "You're coming back. We didn't go through training together just to lose you in this hellhole." Kira managed a small smile. "See you on the other side." Brennan raised his hand. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. The entire team opened fire simultaneously, pouring everything they had at the insurgent positions. Kira broke from cover and ran. The world exploded around her. Bullets kicked up dust at her feet, cracked past her head, ricocheted off rocks with metallic screams. She ran faster than she had ever run in her life, her rifle clutched tight, her pack bouncing against her back. An insurgent stepped out from behind cover directly in her path. She didn't slow down. She fired her sidearm on the run, 2 shots center mass. He dropped. She kept running. The covering fire from her team was fading. They were out of ammunition, unable to maintain the suppression. The insurgents were recovering, bringing their weapons to bear on the lone figure sprinting across open ground. Kira dove behind a low wall as gunfire raked the area where she had been. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. She had covered maybe 300 meters. Halfway there. She couldn't stay here. Staying meant dying. She got up and ran again. More bullets. More near misses. Something tugged at her sleeve. A round passing so close it tore fabric. Another grazed her helmet, the impact ringing through her skull. She stumbled but kept her feet, kept moving, driven by pure will. The ridge was close now. 200 meters. 100. She could see the position she needed, a natural rock formation that would provide cover and elevation. 50 meters. An explosion detonated behind her, the shockwave throwing her forward. She hit the ground hard, rolled, came up running. 20 meters. She reached the ridge and threw herself behind the rocks, gasping for air, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. She was alive. Somehow, impossibly, she was alive. But there was no time to recover. She forced herself up, positioned her rifle on the rocks, and found her first target. The insurgents were advancing on her team's position, preparing for the final assault. She had seconds to stop them. Her first shot dropped the lead insurgent. The second shot took down another. She worked methodically through the enemy formation, each shot precise and deliberate. The insurgents scattered, confused by fire coming from a completely new direction. She had their attention now. They were turning toward her position, returning fire. Bullets slammed into the rocks around her, showering her with stone fragments. But she had cover and elevation. They had neither. She continued firing, working through targets with mechanical efficiency. Every shot counted. Every shot bought her team precious seconds. The insurgents tried to advance on her position, but she cut them down. They tried to flank her, but the terrain didn't allow it. They tried to suppress her with volume of fire, but she had chosen her position too well. And then she heard it. The most beautiful sound she had ever heard in her life. The roar of jet engines. Air support had arrived. Two F-18s screamed over the battlefield, their cannons tearing into insurgent positions with devastating accuracy. The enemy broke and ran, their assault collapsing under the sudden onslaught from above. Within seconds, the battlefield transformed from desperate siege to controlled cleanup. Kira slumped behind her rocks, finally allowing herself to breathe. Her rifle was hot enough to burn skin. Her ammunition pouches were nearly empty. But she had made it. They had all made it. The extraction helicopter touched down 15 minutes later in a swirl of dust and debris. Kira had made her way back to the team's position, moving carefully through the wreckage of the battlefield. Bodies lay scattered among the ruins, silent testimony to the brutal fight that had just ended. Brennan met her at the perimeter, his face showing a mixture of relief and something that looked like awe. "That was the most insane thing I've ever seen anyone do," he said. "And I've been doing this for 10 years. "Did everyone make it?" Kira asked. "Everyone's alive. Chen's leg wound is serious but stable. We're getting him out now." They loaded onto the helicopter, the team moving with practiced efficiency despite their exhaustion. Kira was the last one aboard, taking one final look at the battlefield they were leaving behind. Smoke rose from multiple buildings. The air still smelled of cordite and dust. As the helicopter lifted off, Hartley handed her a water bottle. She drank greedily, not realizing how desperately thirsty she had been until the liquid hit her throat. "How many did you drop from that ridge?" he asked. "I don't know," Kira replied. "I stopped counting." "I counted," Moss said quietly. 42. You dropped 42 hostiles in less than 5 minutes. The helicopter went silent. Everyone was staring at her now. 42 confirmed kills in 5 minutes was beyond exceptional. It was nearly impossible. Peterson spoke up from across the cargo bay. "I was watching through my scope when you made that run. I've never seen anyone move that fast under fire. You should have been dead 10 times over." "But I'm not," Kira said simply. "No," Brennan said. "You're not. And neither are we. Because of you." The flight back to base took 40 minutes. Most of the team dozed off, the adrenaline finally wearing off and leaving them crashed and exhausted. Kira stared out the open door at the landscape passing below, her mind replaying the battle in fragments and flashes. She thought about the moment when Moss had whispered those 3 words. "We won't make it." The moment when failure had seemed inevitable, when the mathematics of combat had stacked impossibly against them. The moment when she had decided to run anyway. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory one more time. "Sometimes the only way through is forward, Kira. Even when forward looks like suicide. Especially then. Because enemies expect you to be rational, to choose survival over mission. The moment you choose mission over survival, you become unpredictable. And unpredictable wins fights." The base appeared on the horizon, a sprawl of temporary buildings and defensive positions in the middle of hostile territory. The helicopter circled once and landed. Medical personnel rushed forward to take Chun, loading him onto a stretcher and hurrying him toward the field hospital. The rest of the team dismounted and stood in a loose group, none of them quite ready to separate yet. Combat created bonds that went deeper than words, connections forged in shared danger and survival. Commander Sarah Oakes was waiting for them, the same instructor who had overseen Kira's qualification course 6 months earlier. She walked up to Brennan, her expression unreadable. "I heard the radio traffic," she said. "Sounds like it got complicated out there." "That's an understatement," Brennan replied. "We were dead if air support had been delayed another minute." Oakes looked at Kira. "I also heard about a certain specialist making an 8-ton dreadmeter sprint across open ground and then eliminating 42 hostiles from an improvised position. That true?" Kira met her gaze. "Someone had to do something. We were out of options. You were out of ammunition, out of time, and outnumbered 5-1, Oakes said. "By any rational calculation, you should have been overrun. Instead, you executed one of the most impressive pieces of combat shooting I've heard of in 20 years of service." "I had good training," Kira said. Oakes allowed herself a small smile. "Yes, you did. Your qualification course performance was exceptional. But this," she gestured at the team, at Kira's torn uniform and dust-covered gear. "This is beyond exceptional. This is the kind of thing that goes in the history books." "With respect, Commander, I'd rather it stay out of the history books," Kira replied. "We completed the mission. We all came home. That's enough." Oak studied her for a moment. "You're getting a medal for this. Probably several. And whether you want it or not, your name is going to circulate. Every team commander in the Navy is going to want you on their operations." She paused, then added more quietly, "Your grandfather would be proud." Kira felt something tighten in her chest. "How did you know about my grandfather?" "I didn't, until I pulled your file after the qualification course. When I saw those long-range shots you were making, I wanted to know where you learned. Found out your grandfather was Thomas Vance, Marine Corps Scout sniper, 3 tours in Vietnam, recipient of 2 Silver Stars and a Navy Cross." Oak shook her head. "Makes sense now. You're carrying on his legacy." "I'm just trying to do the job," Kira said. "You're doing more than the job," Oakes replied. "You're redefining what's possible." She looked at the rest of the team. "All of you performed with distinction today. Get some rest. Debriefing is at 1800 hours. Dismissed." The team dispersed slowly, heading toward their quarters. Moss walked beside Kira, limping slightly from a bruised knee. "You saved our lives today," Moss said. "All of us. We were done without that suppression fire." "We're a team," Kira replied. "Everyone played their part." "No," Moss said firmly. "Everyone contributed, but you made the impossible possible. That run across open ground, that shooting from the ridge. Nobody else could have done that." She paused. "When I said we won't make it, I meant it. I really thought we were going to die out there." "So did I," Kira admitted. "But dying was just one option. Fighting was another. I chose fighting." They reached their quarters, a prefabricated building with thin walls and minimal comfort. But it had cots and shade and safety, which made it feel like a palace after the morning they had endured. Kira stripped off her gear and examined the damage. The bullet that had torn her sleeve had come within centimeters of her arm. The one that grazed her helmet had left a visible score mark in the composite material. She had been seconds from death multiple times, saved only by speed and luck. But she was alive. Her team was alive. Lieutenant Chun would recover. The mission was complete. She lay down on her cot and closed her eyes, expecting to fall asleep immediately. Instead, her mind kept replaying the battle, analyzing each shot, each decision, each moment of danger. This was what combat did to you. It carved itself into your memory with perfect clarity, refusing to fade. Someone knocked on the door. Brennan entered without waiting for an answer. He looked as exhausted as she felt. "Can't sleep either," he said. "It's always like this after contact. Your brain won't shut down." "How long does it last?" Kira asked. "Depends. Sometimes hours. Sometimes days." He sat down on a nearby crate. "I wanted to talk to you about something. What you did today, that wasn't just good shooting. That was something else entirely. The kind of thing that changes how we think about what's possible in combat. It was survival," Kira said. Nothing more. It was 42 confirmed kills in 5 minutes while taking fire from multiple directions, Brennan replied. Do you understand how extraordinary that is? Most snipers are happy with 1 or 2 kills in an entire deployment. You did 42 in 5 minutes. The situation demanded it. Brennan shook his head. The situation demanded the impossible. And you delivered. That's the difference. The debriefing room was crowded. Brennan's team sat along one side of the table, still wearing their combat uniforms, still carrying the weight of the morning's fight. On the other side sat Commander Oakes, a Navy captain Kira didn't recognize, and a 2-star admiral whose presence made everyone sit a little straighter. Admiral Patricia Thornton had a reputation that preceded her. She had commanded SEAL operations across 3 combat zones, had overseen some of the most successful special operations missions in recent history, and had zero tolerance for incompetence or excuses. She was also known for recognizing exceptional performance when she saw it. Let's begin, Thornton said, her voice carrying the authority of decades of command. Lieutenant Brennan, walk me through the operation from insertion to extraction. Brennan stood and moved to a digital map displayed on the wall screen. He detailed the mission plan, the intelligence failures, the compound assault, and the fighting withdrawal. His account was precise, professional, leaving nothing out. When he reached the part about being surrounded and nearly overrun, he paused. At this point, we were in a critical situation, he said. Out of ammunition, surrounded by superior numbers, with air support still minutes away. By any tactical assessment, we were about to be overrun. Thornton leaned forward. But you weren't overrun. What changed? Brennan looked at Kira. Specialist Vance identified an elevated position 800 meters from our defensive perimeter. She proposed a solo movement to that position under fire, believing she could provide enough suppression to hold the enemy until air support arrived. That's suicide, the Navy captain said flatly. That's what I thought too, Brennan agreed. But we were out of options. I authorized the attempt. The room watched as Brennan played helmet camera footage from multiple team members. The video showed Kira breaking from cover and sprinting across open ground while bullets kicked up dust all around her. The footage was chaotic, shaky, but the impossibility of what she was attempting came through clearly. Several officers in the room muttered in disbelief as they watched her reach the ridge, set up her rifle, and begin engaging targets. The helmet cameras couldn't capture the full scope of what happened next, but the radio chatter told the story. Target down. Another target down. They're breaking. Keep firing. Don't let them regroup. How many hostiles did you eliminate from that position? Specialist Vance Thornton asked. Kia astute. 42 confirmed, Admiral. Several more wounded or suppressed. In what time frame? Approximately 5 minutes from first shot to air support arrival. The room went silent. 5 minutes of sustained precision shooting while under fire from multiple directions wasn't just exceptional. It bordered on impossible. Thornton studied Kira for a long moment. I've read your file. Your qualification scores were off the charts. Your instructors reported performance they'd never seen before. But this, she gestured at the screen, this is something else entirely. Where did you learn to shoot like that? My grandfather, Admiral, Marine Corps Scout Sniper. He trained me from the age of 12. Thomas Vance, Thornton said. I knew him. Served with him briefly in the 80s. He was one of the best combat shooters I ever met. Looks like talent runs in the family. She stood and walked around the table to stand directly in front of Kira. What you did today saved 12 American lives. You executed one of the most impressive pieces of combat shooting in modern SEAL history. More importantly, you did it when conventional wisdom said it was impossible. That kind of thinking, that kind of action is exactly what we need in our forces. Thornton turned to address the room. Effective immediately, Specialist Vance is promoted to Petty Officer Second Class. She will also receive the Silver Star for gallantry in action. Additionally, I'm authorizing her transfer to whatever team she chooses. Any commander in Specwickham would be lucky to have her. She looked back at Kira. Where do you want to go? Petty Officer Vance. Kira glanced at Brennan, at Moss, at Hartley and Peterson and the others who had fought beside her. These people had become more than teammates. They had become family forged in combat. "I'd like to stay with my current team, Admiral, if Lieutenant Brennan will have me." Brennan stood. "It would be an honor, Admiral." Thornton nodded with approval. "Good answer. The best operators understand that teams matter more than individual glory." She turned to the rest of the team. "You all performed with distinction today. You adapted to impossible circumstances and completed your mission despite overwhelming odds. That's what SEALs do. Be proud of what you accomplished." The debriefing continued for another hour, going through tactical lessons learned and operational improvements for future missions. But the atmosphere had shifted. What had started as a potential disaster analysis had become a recognition of exceptional performance. When they were finally dismissed, the team walked out together into the fading desert sunlight. The base was preparing for evening operations, with helicopters taking off and patrols returning from their missions. Life continued in the rhythm of deployment. Peterson fell in a step beside Kira. "I owe you a beer when we get back stateside," he said. "Hell, I owe you a lot more than that. You saved my life today." "You would have done the same," Kira replied. "Maybe," Peterson said, "but I don't know if I could have made those shots. I've been shooting my whole life, and I've never seen anything like what you did from that ridge." Moss joined them from the other side. "Did Thornton seriously just offer you any assignment you want, and you chose to stay with us? You could have gone to DevGru, could have written your own ticket." "This is my team," Kira said simply. "Why would I leave?" "Because most people would kill for that kind of opportunity," Moss replied. "But I'm glad you stayed. We make a good team." "The best team," Hartley added, walking up behind them. He clapped Kira on the shoulder. "When Brennan first told me you were joining us, I had my doubts. Thought you were too inexperienced, too untested. I was wrong. You're one of the finest operators I've ever served with." Coming from Hartley, who had been one of her biggest skeptics during training, the words meant everything. They reached their quarters and stood in a loose circle, none of them quite ready to go inside, and in the moment. Combat created a bond that went beyond words, a connection that couldn't be explained to anyone who hadn't experienced it. They had faced death together and survived. That changed people. Brennan addressed the group. "We've got 72 hours before our next mission briefing. Use the time to rest, recover, and process what happened today. Write your reports. Call home if you can. Remember why we do this." He looked at each team member in turn. "Today was hard. The next mission might be harder. But we're still here, still fighting, still accomplishing the impossible. Be proud of that." The team dispersed slowly, heading to their quarters or the mess hall or wherever they needed to be. Kira walked toward her building, her body finally registering just how exhausted she was. Every muscle ached. Her hands were scraped and bruised. Her uniform was torn and stained. But she was alive. Her team was alive. And tomorrow, they would do it all over again. She thought about her grandfather, about all those summers in Montana, learning to read wind and calculate distance. She thought about the qualification course, about Peterson's initial hostility and Hartley skepticism. She thought about the moment when Moss had whispered, "We won't make it," and her decision to run anyway. All of it had led to this moment. All of it had prepared her for the impossible choice between staying safe or saving her team. And she knew without doubt that she had made the right choice. Inside her quarters, she found a message waiting on her bunk. A handwritten note in Commander Oak's precise script. "Your grandfather will be proud. More importantly, you should be proud. You've earned your place among the best. Well done, Petty Officer Vance." Kira folded the note carefully and tucked it into her gear. Someday, when this deployment was over, she would add it to the small collection of memories she kept from her grandfather. His dog tags, a photograph of him in Vietnam, a spent cartridge from his service rifle, and now this. Proof that his legacy lived on, that his training had saved lives, that the lessons he had taught her in those Montana mountains had made a difference when it mattered most. 3 days later, Kira stood on the range at the base, her rifle resting on the sandbags in front of her. The morning air was cool, the desert not yet heated by the climbing sun. She had come out here alone, needing time to think, to process everything that had happened. The target sat at 1,200 meters, a standard silhouette that would have challenged her 6 months ago. Now it felt routine. She settled into position, controlled her breathing, and took the shot. Perfect center mass. She heard footsteps behind her. Moss approached carrying 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Kira before sitting down on the sandbags beside her. Couldn't sleep either, Moss asked. Too much going on in my head, Kira replied. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back on that ridge. That's normal. It takes time to process. Moss sipped her coffee. I talked to my brother last night. He's Marine infantry, been through some heavy combat. He said the hard missions stay with you forever. You don't forget them. You just learn to carry them. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sun paint the desert in shades of orange and gold. Behind them, the base was beginning to wake up with the sounds of morning routines and preparations for the day's operations. Word got out about what you did, Moss said. I've had 3 different teams try to recruit me just because I'm your spotter. Everyone wants to work with you now. That's not why I do this, Kira said. I know. That's why they want you. You're not in it for glory or recognition. You're in it to get the job done and bring everyone home. That's rare. Peterson emerged from the morning shadows, also carrying coffee. He joined them without asking, settling onto the ground nearby. Morning formation got canceled, he announced. Apparently, the Admiral wants to do something special. Nobody knows what. Probably more medals, Moss guessed. The Navy loves its ceremonies. They sat together as the sun continued to rise, 3 operators who had faced death together and survived. The conversation drifted to lighter topics. Families back home, plans for leave, terrible food in the mess hall, the normal things that kept people human in the middle of deployment. Brennan appeared an hour later, walking across the range with purpose. Formation in 30 minutes, he called. Full dress uniforms. Admiral's orders. The team gathered outside the command building precisely on time, standing in formation in their dress blues. The white uniforms stood out starkly against the desert background, a reminder that even in combat zones, tradition and ceremony had their place. Admiral Thornton emerged from the building accompanied by Commander Oakes and several other senior officers. The team snapped to attention. Behind them, other units from the base had gathered to watch, forming an impromptu audience. At ease, Thornton commanded. She stepped forward, holding a small wooden case. 3 days ago, this team executed one of the most successful hostage rescue operations in recent history. They faced overwhelming odds, equipment failures, and enemy forces 3 times their size. They adapted, they fought, and they won. She opened the case, revealing the distinctive ribbon and star of the Silver Star Medal. Petty Officer Kira Vance, front and center. Kira stepped forward, her heart pounding. This was real. This was actually happening. She stood at attention before the Admiral. Thornton read from a citation that detailed the operation, the desperate circumstances, the impossible run across open ground, and the 42 enemy combatants eliminated in 5 minutes. The words made it sound heroic, almost mythical. Kira remembered it differently. She remembered terror and desperation and the absolute certainty that she was about to die. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against an armed enemy, Thornton concluded, the United States Navy awards the Silver Star to Petty Officer Second Class Kira Vance. She pinned the medal to Kira's uniform, then stepped back and saluted. Kira returned the salute, feeling the weight of the moment, the significance of what this medal represented. Not just her actions, but her grandfather's legacy, all those summers of training, every impossible shot she had ever taken. Thornton wasn't finished. She turned to address the assembled personnel. What Petty Officer Vance did that day represents the best of what we are as a force. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't ask if it was possible. She saw what needed to be done, and she did it. That's the warrior spirit that has defined naval special warfare since its inception. The Admiral looked back at Kira. Your grandfather would be immensely proud. I'm proud. Your team is proud. And you should be proud. You've earned your place among the warriors. The formation was dismissed with orders to return to normal operations. But as Kira walked away from the ceremony, she was surrounded by team members and other operators offering congratulations. Even soldiers from other units, people she had never met, stopped to shake her hand or offer respect. Hartley pushed through the crowd and pulled her aside. "Listen," he said, "I need to tell you something. When you first joined us, I didn't think you belonged. I thought you were a diversity checkbox, someone who got pushed through because of politics rather than skill." "I know," Kira said. "Let me finish. I was wrong. Completely, totally wrong. You're one of the best operators I've ever served with. Period. No qualifications. No exceptions. And I'm sorry it took combat for me to see that." He extended his hand. Kira shook it, feeling the weight of respect behind the gesture. The rest of the day passed in a blur of well wishes and returned routines. By evening, things had mostly returned to normal. The team gathered for dinner in the mess hall, sitting together at their usual table, trading stories and planning for the next mission. Brennan raised his water bottle in a toast. "To the best team in Spec Wickham. May we always be this lucky and this good." They all drank to that. Kira looked around the table at these people who had become her family. Peterson, who had gone from her harshest critic to loyal friend. Moss, who had been there through everything. Hartley, who had finally given her the respect she had earned. Brennan, who had trusted her with the impossible. This was why she had endured the doubt, the skepticism, the constant pressure to prove herself. Not for medals or recognition or career advancement. For this. For the bond that came from fighting beside people you trusted with your life. For the knowledge that when everything went wrong, your team would be there. Moss leaned over and spoke quietly. "You know this is just the beginning, right? After what you did, they're going to send us on the hardest missions. The ones nobody else can handle." "Good," Kira replied. "That's what we trained for." That night, Kira finally wrote the letter she had been putting off. "Dear Mom and Dad," she wrote, "I can't tell you much about what I'm doing out here, but I want you to know that I'm safe and I'm doing important work. I also want you to know that everything Grandpa taught me, all those summers in Montana that you thought were just hunting trips, it all meant something. It all mattered. His legacy lives on, and I'm honored to carry it forward." She sealed the letter and added it to the outgoing mail. Then she lay down on her cot and, for the first time since the battle, slept without nightmares. The next morning brought a new mission briefing. Another high-value target. Another impossible situation. Another chance to prove that the word impossible was just a challenge waiting to be overcome. Kira checked her rifle, loaded her magazines, and prepared her gear with the same methodical care she always used. Beside her, Moss did the same. Around them, the team prepared for whatever came next. They were warriors. They were family. And together, there was nothing they couldn't accomplish. If you connected with this story, drop a comment about what resonated most with you, or share if you've witnessed similar courage in real life. Your favorite moment, character, or personal experience, we'd love to hear it. The helicopter was waiting. Another mission beckoned, and Petty Officer Kira Vance was ready.